The unlikely partnership. Sarah Chen stood at the window of the shabby motel room, watching three moons rise over the spaceport. Her dark hair was tied back in a tight ponytail, and her hand kept touching the laser pistol at her hip. The neon signs from the street below painted her face in shifting colors of pink and blue. James Drake sat across the room, cleaning his chrome-plated galactic gun. Neither of them wanted to be there, but they had no choice. The artifact they'd found was too important to ignore. "We should check the black market first," James said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. His voice was rough, like someone who'd breathed too much space dust. "I know some people who can tell us about the second artifact." Sarah turned away from the window. "Your criminal friends." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The same ones who tried to kill you last month." James shrugged his broad shoulders. "They only tried to kill me a little bit." He finished cleaning his gun and holstered it. "Besides, you're the one who lost our target today. If you hadn't jumped in front of my shot, you would have destroyed the artifact." Sarah cut in. "Some of us think before we shoot." Their argument was interrupted by a soft beeping from Sarah's wrist computer. A hologram popped up, showing a map of the city's underground levels. A red dot pulsed near the center. "My contact came through," Sarah said, studying the map. "Looks like someone's trying to sell information about the artifacts in the lower markets." James stood up, checking his weapons. "Could be a trap." "Of course it's a trap." Sarah pulled on her armored jacket. "But it's the only lead we've got." Together, they left the motel and took a grimy elevator down to the city's lower levels. The deeper they went, the darker it got. Soon, they were walking through narrow streets lit only by flickering holo ads and the dim glow of alien food stalls. James walked slightly behind Sarah, watching their backs. He didn't trust her, but he had to admit she knew what she was doing. The way she moved through the crowds was impressive, like a predator that didn't want to be noticed. They found the market contact in a small bar called the Broken Airlock. The alien sat in a dark corner, its four eyes glowing faintly. Its tentacles were wrapped around a drink that smoked slightly. "You have information about the artifacts?" Sarah asked, sliding into the seat across from it. The alien's eyes blinked in sequence. "Information expensive. Very expensive." Before Sarah could respond, James stepped forward and put his gun on the table. "How about this? You tell us what we need to know, and we don't report your illegal tech smuggling to the Galactic Police." The alien's skin changed color rapidly. "You threatened Zextil. Many have tried. All have." It never finished the sentence. The bar's front window exploded inward, showering them with glass. Three figures in black armor rushed in, firing energy weapons. Sarah dove under the table, pulling her pistol. James was already firing back, his galactic gun lighting up the dark bar with blue fire. The alien informant disappeared in the chaos, using some kind of cloaking technology. "Friends of yours," Sarah shouted over the noise, shooting one of the attackers in the leg. "Not my style." James kicked over a table for better cover. "These are professional hunters." Working together, they'd made their way to the kitchen. Sarah provided covering fire while James threw stun grenades. They ran through the kitchen, past surprised alien cooks, and out into a back alley. "We need to split up," Sarah said, checking her ammunition. "Meet back at the motel in 2 hours." James grabbed her arm. "Wait. They knew we were coming. Someone must have told them." Sarah pulled away, but nodded. "My contact is compromised. This is bigger than we thought." "Partners, then." James held out his hand. "At least until we figure out what's going on." Sarah looked at his hand for a long moment. More shouts came from the bar. The hunters were getting closer. "Partners," she agreed, shaking his hand quickly. "But if you betray me, I'll shoot you myself." James grinned. "Wouldn't expect anything less." They ran in opposite directions as energy bolts lit up the alley. Both of them knew this was just the beginning. The artifact they'd found was part of something much bigger and much more dangerous. And like it or not, They needed each other to survive what was coming. Neither of them saw the small drone watching from above, transmitting their every move to someone who had been waiting a very long time for the artifacts to be found again. The chase begins. The neon jungle of New Shanghai's lower city burned Sarah's eyes as she ran across the rooftops. 3 hoverbikes roared behind her, their riders wearing the same black armor as the hunters from the bar. But it wasn't their weapons that worried her. It was the strange organic tentacles growing from their suits. "Drake," she yelled into her comm unit. "I could use some help here." "Little busy," James's voice crackled back. The sound of gunfire echoed through the connection. "Found out what those tentacles are. Some kind of living tech. They're trying to scan the artifact's energy signature." Sarah jumped across a gap between buildings, rolling to absorb the impact. A tentacle whipped through the air where her head had been. Less science lesson, more helping. She reached back and threw a small silver sphere. It exploded in midair, releasing a cloud of tiny robots that looked like glowing butterflies. The hoverbikes swerved to avoid them, but the butterflies attached themselves to the bike's engines. Within seconds, the engines started to spark and fail. "Nice toys," James said through the comm. "Where'd you get those?" "Made them myself." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Not all of us rely on just big guns. She reached the edge of the building and looked down. 50 stories of empty air stretched below her. The hoverbikes were closing in again, their riders having switched to backup power systems. "Speaking of big guns," she muttered, "where are you?" A massive explosion answered her question. James crashed through a nearby billboard riding something that looked like a cross between a motorcycle and a small spaceship. The vehicle's wings were spread wide, glowing with blue energy. "Need a ride?" He grinned, bringing the flying bike alongside the building. Sarah jumped on behind him just as energy bolts filled the air where she'd been standing. "What is this thing?" "Borrowed it from a friend." James gunned the engine, and they shot forward through the city's maze of buildings. "He doesn't know I borrowed it yet." The black armored hunters regrouped and gave chase. Their organic tentacles reached out, trying to grab the artifact that Sarah carried in her backpack. The city lights blurred around them as James wove through traffic, diving under floating billboards and threading between buildings. "They're not trying to kill us," Sarah realized, firing back at their pursuers. "They want us alive." "Yeah, noticed that." James pulled up sharply, barely avoiding a cargo hauler. "Probably because—" "Wait, what's that?" A new sound cut through the night, a high-pitched whine that made their teeth hurt. A portal opened in the air ahead of them, and something massive began to emerge. "By the stars," Sarah whispered. It was a ship, but like nothing they'd ever seen. It seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal, constantly shifting and changing shape. As it fully emerged from the portal, they could see it was easily the size of a small building. "Think that's what the artifact came from?" James asked, bringing their bike to a hover. The black armored hunters suddenly broke off their pursuit, their hover bikes racing away as fast as they could go. The liquid metal ship turned towards Sarah and James, and a voice boomed in their heads. "Return HA8 ways is to all in." "Any chance we could discuss this?" James asked. The ship's response was to fire a beam of pure white energy. James threw their bike into a dive, the beam missing them by inches. It hit a nearby building, and the entire structure simply vanished. Not destroyed, but erased from existence as if it had never been there. "New plan," Sarah shouted. "We need to hide." "Way ahead of you." James pointed their bike toward the ground. "Remember those criminal friends you made fun of? Time to call in a favor." They dove into the city's underground passages, the liquid metal ship too large to follow. As they flew through the darkness, Sarah checked the artifact in her bag. It was glowing brighter than before, pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. "Drake," she said quietly. "I think it's responding to the ship, like they're connected somehow." "Great. Ancient alien tech that acts like it's alive. What could go wrong?" He guided them into a hidden tunnel. By the way, you can call me James. If we're going to die together, might as well be on a first-name basis. Sarah was about to respond when her wrist computer beeped. The map she'd gotten earlier was changing, showing new information. A second artifact had appeared on the scan, but its location made no sense. James, she said, according to this, the other artifact is. She paused, double-checking the reading. It's inside that ship. Above them, the sound of reality being torn apart echoed through the city as more portals began to open. Well, James said, I guess we know where we're going next. Sarah tightened her grip around his waist as they flew deeper into the darkness. You're assuming we survived that long. Neither of them noticed that the artifact's glow had spread, thin lines of light now crawling up Sarah's arm like luminous veins. The change had begun, just as it had been planned thousands of years ago. Secrets and lies. The smuggler's den was hidden inside an abandoned space whale skeleton. James led Sarah through the massive ribcage, their footsteps echoing on bone that had been polished smooth by centuries of acid rain. The artifact in Sarah's backpack pulsed stronger now, sending waves of warmth through her body. The lines on your arm, James said quietly. They're spreading. Sarah pulled her sleeve down to hide the glowing patterns that now reached her shoulder. I know. And before you ask, no, it doesn't hurt. It feels. She searched for the right word. Natural. They reached a door made from the whale's old heart valve. A small alien with skin like chrome opened it. Drake, you still owe me 4. The alien stopped, its silver face reflecting their images like a mirror. You bring chosen one here. Are you crazy? Sarah stepped forward. What did you call me? But the alien slammed the door shut. James cursed and pulled out his gun. Malik, open up or I'll. Look. Sarah pointed at her reflection in the alien's metallic door. The glowing lines on her arm formed a pattern, the same pattern that was etched on the artifact. Before they could process this, the air crackled with energy. The liquid metal ship had found them. But instead of attacking, it projected a hologram, a message written in ancient symbols that Sarah suddenly realized she could read. The merger approaches, she translated. The two must become one. James stared at her. How did you? The space whale skeleton shuddered. From its empty eye sockets, thousands of tiny machines poured out like glowing tears. They formed into humanoid shapes, ghost-like beings made of pure light. Light walkers, James whispered. I thought they were just stories. The light beings surrounded them, but didn't attack. Instead, they bowed to Sarah. One stepped forward and spoke in a voice like singing crystal. The first artifact has chosen its vessel, but the second calls for its other half. The balance must be maintained. James raised his gun, but Sarah stopped him. Wait, show us your true form. The Lightwalker nodded, and its glow dimmed, revealing a face that made both humans gasp. It looked exactly like Sarah, but older, with ancient wisdom in its eyes. I am what you will become, it said, unless he completes his transformation too. It pointed at James, where the walker's light touched his chest. His shirt dissolved, revealing faint lines beginning to form on his skin, lines that matched the patterns on the second artifact. No way, James backed up. I'm just a bounty hunter. I'm not part of some ancient. The liquid metal ship fired, its beam turning the Lightwalkers to dust. Sarah grabbed James and pulled him through the heart valve door, which melted open at her touch. They ran through Malik's den, past tanks of exotic aliens and cages of quantum butterflies. Did you know? Sarah demanded as they ran. About any of this? No, James shot back. But I'm starting to think finding each other wasn't an accident. They reached Malik's back room, filled with illegal portal generators. Sarah's artifact pulsed faster, and James felt something in his pocket grow warm. A shard of the second artifact he'd kept secret from her. You lied to me, Sarah said, noticing the glow from his pocket. You had a piece all along. And you didn't tell me you could read ancient alien languages. He pulled out the shard. It flew from his hand to Sarah's artifact, the two pieces calling to each other. The wall behind them exploded. The black armored hunters poured in, their tentacles writhing. But now Sarah and James could see what they really were. Not hunters, but guardians, ancient machines built to bring the artifacts together. The merger cannot be stopped, they spoke in unison. The two must become one. Sarah looked at James, seeing him clearly for the first time. The lines on his chest were spreading, matching her own patterns. Two halves of the same whole. Run, he suggested. Run, she agreed. They jumped through the nearest portal generator just as the liquid metal ship broke through the ceiling. The last thing they saw was Malik, the chrome alien, smiling as he pressed a button that would scatter their atoms across 12 different dimensions. Good luck, chosen ones, he whispered. The portal generator exploded in a burst of quantum energy, and Sarah and James felt themselves being pulled apart, not just in space, but in time itself. The artifacts pulsed one final time, and the truth hit them both. They weren't just running from their destiny anymore. They were running towards it. Divided we fall. Sarah woke up floating in a sea of living stars. Each star had a tiny face that whispered secrets of the universe, secrets she could almost understand. The glowing lines on her body now covered her entirely, making her look like a constellation in human form. James, she called out, but her voice created ripples of color in the void. A million light years away, or perhaps just a few feet, James found himself walking through a city made of memories. Buildings rose and fell like waves, each one showing scenes from his past. But some memories weren't his own. They belonged to someone who had lived thousands of years ago. The separation was necessary, a voice said beside him. James turned to see one of the light walkers, but this one looked like his mirror image. To understand your destiny, you must first understand your past. Meanwhile, Sarah discovered she could swim through the living stars by following the patterns on her skin. Each pattern matched a constellation, and each constellation held a piece of the truth. The artifacts, she whispered, watching the stars dance around her. They're not weapons at all. No, the stars sang back in 1,000 tiny voices. They're keys. In his city of memories, James watched scenes play out on the liquid buildings. He saw the first humans to discover the artifacts, saw how their discovery led to war. But more importantly, he saw why the artifacts had chosen him and Sarah. We're not the first, are we? He asked his light walker guide. There have been many chosen pairs throughout history, the walker answered. But you are the first to survive the initial merger. The question is, are you strong enough to survive what comes next? The living stars carried Sarah through space and time, showing her glimpses of parallel universes. In each one, she saw versions of herself and James finding the artifacts. In each one, they failed. Except, there, the stars whispered, look closer. She saw a reality where they succeeded, but the cost was devastating. The artifacts had merged, but the chosen pair had been torn apart at a fundamental level. Their atoms had been scattered across the multiverse. Is that our fate too? She asked. The stars swirled around her, forming into a mirror. In it, she saw James in his city of memories, learning the same truth she was discovering. Their eyes met across dimensions. Found you, they said simultaneously. Reality cracked. The living stars scattered. The memory buildings crumbled. Sarah and James found themselves standing in a place that shouldn't exist, a quantum nexus point where all realities met. The glowing lines on their bodies pulsed in sync. Where Sarah's lines were like flowing water, James's were like crystalline branches. Together, they formed a complete circuit. The artifacts, James said, pulling out his shard. They're not just keys. They're parts of ourselves, Sarah finished, taking out her piece. Pieces of our souls scattered across time. The quantum nexus shuddered. The black armored guardians emerged from rifts in reality. but now their organic tentacles reached toward them almost desperately. The time lock approaches, the Guardians announced. The choice must be made. Above them, the liquid metal ship appeared, but it was different now. Its surface showed reflections of every reality where they had failed. In each one, the universe itself had unraveled. "Well," James said, looking at Sarah, "at least we know why everyone's trying to either help us or kill us." Sarah laughed despite the situation. "The fate of all reality rests on us completing some cosmic circuit. No pressure." Their artifacts pulsed again, stronger this time. In the quantum space between them, they could see what would happen if they brought the pieces together. A complete reset of reality itself. "That's why we were chosen," Sarah realized. "Not to save everything, but to help it start over," James finished. The Guardians moved closer, their tentacles forming a circle around them. The Lightwalkers appeared too, their forms flickering between past and future versions of Sarah and James. "The time lock activates in moments," the walkers said in unison. "Reality cannot sustain itself much longer. You must choose." Sarah looked at James, seeing every version of him across every timeline. He looked back, seeing the same in her. "Together?" she asked, holding out her artifact. James took her hand, his shard of the artifact glowing brighter. "Together. But first." He pulled her close and kissed her. The glowing lines on their bodies flared like supernovas. The artifacts hummed with power. And somewhere in the quantum nexus, a clock began its final countdown. The next moment would either save all of reality, or end it forever. The truth unveiled. Time froze. Literally. In the quantum nexus, Sarah and James floated in the single moment between seconds. Their kiss had triggered something in the artifacts, a revelation that cascaded through every dimension simultaneously. The glowing lines on their bodies had merged, creating patterns that wrote themselves across reality itself. "Oh," Sarah said softly. "We were never human, were we?" Around them, the universe peeled back its layers like pages in an infinite book. Each layer showed them more of the truth. They were fragments of something ancient, something that had split itself apart to preserve the universe. "We're the failsafe," James realized, watching memories that were billions of years old play through his mind. "When the universe was created, it needed a backup plan," Sarah finished. She could see it now. They were parts of the original consciousness that had designed reality. Split apart to watch, to wait, to ensure existence itself didn't unravel. The quantum nexus transformed. The black-armored Guardians melted, revealing their true forms. Pieces of James's consciousness that had been scattered through time. The Lightwalkers dissolved into pure energy, showing what they really were. Fragments of Sarah's original self, watching over countless realities. But something was wrong. The liquid metal ship began to change, its surface cracking to reveal what lay inside. A third consciousness, twisted and dark, that had been trying to prevent their reunion. "Hello, my children," it said in a voice that shook the foundations of reality. The ship's liquid metal fell away completely, revealing a being made of pure void, a shadow of their original creator self that had gone mad watching infinity unfold. "The Dark Observer," James whispered, ancient knowledge flooding back. "The part of us that broke," Sarah added, understanding flowing between them. The Dark Observer laughed, and black holes bloomed like flowers. "Did you think I split us apart to protect reality? No. I did it because creation itself is flawed. It needs to end. To start again. Clean. Perfect." The artifacts in their hands pulsed with urgency. Sarah and James could feel reality beginning to tear. The time lock wasn't just counting down. It was counting up in all directions at once. Past and future were colliding. Then something impossible happened. Malik, the chrome alien, stepped out of nowhere, his silver skin reflecting infinite realities. "You forgot about me," he said, but his voice was different now. Ancient. Familiar. "The fourth fragment," the Dark Observer hissed. Malik's chrome surface rippled. "I chose to stay hidden, watching, preparing, creating the artifacts to guide these two back together. He looked at Sarah and James. You needed to learn humanity before you could remember divinity. The quantum nexus shuddered. Reality was reaching its breaking point. They had moments left before everything collapsed. Choose now, the Dark Observer commanded. Join me. End this flawed existence. Start fresh. But Sarah and James could see the truth in the patterns that covered their bodies, patterns that were really mathematical formulas describing the fundamental nature of reality. The flaw that the Dark Observer saw wasn't a flaw at all. The imperfection is the point, Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. It's what makes it beautiful, James added, what makes it worth preserving. They raised their artifacts, no longer separate pieces but parts of a whole truth. Malik stepped forward, his chrome form flowing into them, completing the circuit of their original consciousness. The Dark Observer screamed in rage and fear. Reality held its breath. The artifacts blazed with light that came from everywhere and nowhere. Sarah and James felt themselves becoming something more, not losing their humanity, but adding to it. Understanding flooded through them. Why they had been chosen, why they had to learn to love as humans before they could remember what they truly were. The Dark Observer launched itself at them, trailing unmade realities like broken wings. But it was too late. The artifacts had shown them the real truth. The universe wasn't meant to be perfect. It was meant to be alive. Ready? Sarah asked, her consciousness expanding to touch the edges of existence. Ready, James answered, his awareness encompassing entire galaxies. Together, they reached out to the Dark Observer, not to destroy it, but to heal it, to show it what they had learned as humans, to help it understand that flaws weren't weaknesses, they were possibilities. The time lock shattered. Reality held. And somewhere, in a small bar at the edge of space, two bounty hunters were about to meet for the first time. Again. Ultimate decision. A million versions of Sarah and James stood in a circle of light, each pair from a different reality where they had almost succeeded. But this time was different. This time, they remembered who they were. The Dark Observer writhed between dimensions, its void black form casting anti-shadows that erased pieces of reality wherever they fell. You cannot heal what isn't broken, it snarled. I am the truth you refuse to see. Sarah, both human and cosmic being now, reached out through time. The glowing equations on her skin solved themselves, each solution creating bridges between moments. Watch, she said, pulling a memory from the beginning of the universe. The quantum nexus transformed into a vast movie theater, each screen showing a different beginning of creation. On every screen, their original self saw the same thing, the moment of choice. We chose to fragment ourselves, James said, understanding flowing through him like starfire. Not because we had to, but because. Because perfection is the enemy of life. Malik's voice echoed from everywhere. His chrome form had become a living mirror, reflecting the truth back at the Dark Observer. Watch what really happened. The memories played faster. Their original self, seeing that a perfect universe would be unchanging. The decision to split into 4 parts: light, structure, hidden truth, and necessary darkness, each fragment taking on a different role in guiding creation. The Dark Observer's growing despair at seeing imperfection. The final split that sent them into human forms to learn, to grow, to understand. But something new was happening. As they watched the memories, reality itself began to evolve. The quantum formulas on Sarah and James's skin started rewriting themselves, showing new possibilities. The universe isn't a mistake, Sarah said, her voice carrying through all dimensions. It's alive, growing, learning. James stepped forward, the crystalline patterns on his body resonating with Sarah's flowing ones. And so are we. The Dark Observer lashed out with tentacles of pure entropy, but where they touched Sarah and James, the decay transformed into new life. Each destruction became a creation. Impossible, the Observer whispered. No, Malik said, his chrome form flowing like quicksilver. Inevitable. Show them. Sarah and James raised their artifacts, but they weren't artifacts anymore. They had become keys to understanding itself. As they brought them together, something miraculous happened. The universe began to sing. Every atom, every wave of light, every piece of dark matter joined in a cosmic symphony. The melody was imperfect, full of jazz-like improvisations and unexpected harmonies. It was beautiful because of its flaws, not despite them. The dark observer heard the music and, for the first time, understood. This was the lesson, it said softly. Not how to fix imperfection, but how to love it. Sarah finished. Reality rippled. The quantum nexus filled with beings from across time and space, all the lives they had touched, all the moments they had changed. Even the black-armored guardians and lightwalkers joined the cosmic chorus. Then came the choice. The time lock had reset itself, giving them one moment to decide. Remain as they were, separate but whole, or reunite their fragments and return to their original form. Sarah looked at James, seeing every version of him across infinity. I choose this, she said. Being human, being imperfect, being alive. James took her hand, cosmic energy flowing between them. Together then. One more time around. Malik's chrome form sparkled with laughter. Why not? Eternity is long. The dance goes on. The dark observer looked at its own hands, seeing not void but possibility. Perhaps I too have something to learn about imperfection. They stood together, Sarah, James, Malik, and the observer, 4 parts of one cosmic whole. But instead of reuniting, they chose something unprecedented. They chose to stay divided, to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep loving. The time lock accepted their choice. Reality shifted. The universe sang. And somewhere, in every dimension, 2 bounty hunters were about to meet for the first time, carrying pieces of a mystery they didn't yet understand. But this time, they had the dark observer's blessing. A touch of necessary darkness to make the light shine brighter. The final game was about to begin. The final game. The multiverse held its breath as reality reset itself one last time. But this wasn't an ending. It was a transformation. Sarah, James, Malik, and the dark observer stood at the crossroads of all possible futures. The cosmic symphony had changed them all. Where once they were fragments trying to become whole, now they were whole beings choosing to remain beautifully incomplete. It's time, Malik said, his chrome surface showing reflections of every choice they'd ever made. The final pattern must be written. The dark observer, no longer dark but shifting with colors that had no names, raised its hands. I understand now. The flaw in creation wasn't a flaw at all. It was a door. Reality began to reshape itself around them. The quantum formulas on Sarah and James's bodies started dancing, creating new mathematics that had never existed before. Each equation solved itself in impossible ways, bending the rules of existence. Look, Sarah whispered, pointing to something extraordinary. The universe was growing new dimensions, not just space and time, but dimensions of possibility. Each one sparked to life like a newborn star, created from the joy of imperfection. The cosmic symphony had become a celebration of existence itself. Then they saw it, the true purpose of their journey. We're not here to fix reality, James said, understanding flooding through him. We're here to set it free. The artifacts, no longer mere keys, transformed into pure potential. In Sarah's hands, her piece became liquid starlight. In James's, his fragment turned into crystallized time. Together, they formed something that had never existed before, a lens through which reality could see itself. But the dark observer had one final revelation. The time lock, it said, its voice filled with wonder. It wasn't counting down to an ending. It was counting up to a beginning. Malik finished. The black-armored guardians and lightwalkers appeared one last time. But they were different now. They had become bridges between what was and what could be. Their tentacles and light forms wove together, creating pathways through possibility itself. Sarah looked at James, both of them now glowing with the power of unwritten futures, ready to break all the rules. "With you?" He grinned. "Always." They brought their artifacts together. But instead of merging them, they did something unprecedented. They set them free. The artifacts shot into the cosmic symphony, becoming notes in the universal song. Each note created new melodies, new possibilities, new ways for reality to dance. The dark observer joined in, its presence now adding depth and texture to creation instead of trying to end it. Malik's crone form became a prism, splitting existence into infinite beautiful refractions. Then came the final choice. Sarah and James, still holding hands, stood before the newest dimension, a space where stories could write themselves, where possibilities could dream. They could step through, become human again, live new adventures across a million realities. Or they could remain as they were, cosmic beings watching over creation. They chose both, and neither, and everything in between. "The game changes," Sarah said, the patterns on her skin becoming stories yet to be told. "But we keep playing," James finished, his crystalline patterns turning into doorways through time. Malik laughed, his chrome form sparkling with infinite possibilities. "Every ending is just a new beginning, and every flaw is a gift," the observer added, finally at peace. Together, they stepped into the new dimension. Reality reshaped itself around them, not healing its imperfections but celebrating them. The cosmic symphony reached a crescendo that contained all possible music. And somewhere, in a small bar at the edge of space, a bounty hunter named Sarah Chen was about to meet a man named James Drake. They didn't know they were carrying pieces of the universe inside them. They didn't know their love would reshape reality. They didn't know a lot of things. But that was the point. The time lock finished its count, not with a bang or a whisper, but with a question. What story would they choose to tell next? The answer was everywhere, written in the quantum formulas of their skin, singing in the cosmic symphony, dancing in the light of newborn dimensions. All of them. Forever. The end.